Hi, I'm Isabel Aimee, also known as Dr. B. What children learn and how children learn is what occupies my time. It does occupy my time because we adults have been hoodwinked by the education system all our lives, from kindergarten to school to senior school, university and beyond. The media is our new educational tool. We really don't know how children learn or what we can do better for them. We somehow know instinctively that the systems in which we're living are wrong, and the schools we're sending our children to, lovely as the people may be and well-intentioned, the children are not getting what they need. Somehow we are starting to wake up to know what children need, and it's very hard to put into words for a lot of us. I've spent the last 30 odd years studying this because firstly, I needed to free myself. I needed to find out why I was so different from everyone else, why I wanted different things from everyone else, why I could somehow find the courage to stand up to my father or my brother, both very heavily indoctrinated in their systems, and say, no, what you're saying about me is just wrong. My childhood was full of creativity because that's how I survived. I would go into my room or out into nature. In nature, I would gather things, absorb things, look at things, play with things, make things outside, and then bring them home and make more things inside with nature. That was my survival strategy, and it gave me a quiet sense of joy and satisfaction and peace. It may have made me a slightly different child to the ones who were collecting stickers and rubbers and all the best gizmos and toys. But it also made me someone that people wanted to confide in and have me listen to them. And of course, it ended up that I was a person who became a very good listener because I knew that children had more in them than was usually given them. I knew that children had more in them than was usually understood. So nature, and then the creativity side of things. I spent my time drawing and making. I would sew dolls' clothes. I would make whole little worlds for them. I would be in imagination, not necessarily social interaction games. For me, it was architectural work, designing, making, creating. That was fascinating to me. But of course, there are all different facets of creativity. So the reason I'm putting out these videos, I'm going to start pouring them out now, a series of them, is because I know that there is this scarcity complex being exercised in schools where we're taught certain things. I talk to beautiful teachers and they say, I have to teach this, it's on the syllabus. At least I point out that it's a theory only. So they know that what we're learning isn't necessarily correct, but we learn to trust the establishment and not to trust ourselves. So the first thing I want to talk about is inner trust. How do you allow your child to go through life trusting their inner knowledge? How do you even allow your child to know and value that they have inner knowledge? How is it that you're able to do this when you as an adult are supposed to be the authoritarian figure trying to say this is good and that's not, you must eat this and not that, please don't do that, do this. It's an interesting balance. Of course, you as the parent are creating your environment, your home, and it's up to you whether you choose to recreate your environment just as your parents did, or whether you want to realize, how do I incorporate this child, these children, and their questions, their needs? How do I incorporate them into the physical environment that I'm creating? My Equip course is one which helps parents who are starting to understand the need for homeschooling. It helps you get yourself ready physically, personally. It also helps your child get into the creative zone. And then the most important thing for me is that I will work with you, hold your hand as it were, and we look at your home environment and how you can look at it with new eyes, reappraise it, and with a series of quite simple changes, restructure it so that you and your child have place to be peaceful, to learn in, to recover in, and to experience the adventure of gaining new knowledge. That's what a child is all about. And in fact, it's what we're all about. It's just most of us have been lulled into a sense of complacency and we forget. We're allowed to discover. We even think there is nothing more to discover, and there couldn't be anything further from the truth, because most of what we do learn is based on a whole lot of falsities. So my speciality has been not only in maintaining and awakening creativity, but how do you do this in the external world? So back to trust. How is it that you can trust that your ideas are actually valid? How can you trust that your 3-year-old's ideas are valid, that you should listen to them? How can you give them that sense that they will dare to come forth with their own idea? Because at that age, it's mostly just questions, but you will find, contrary to what psychologists may still tell you, that at those young ages, children are putting forth statements and questions. And mostly, we say that kind of thought only develops when you're 7, 8, 9. But I can assure you, these very small people do know. They are aware of what's appropriate or inappropriate for their environment. So the first thing about helping and encouraging that inner trust in your child is to observe, to listen and to observe. And what I mean by that is you keep your mouth shut for a lot of the time. You watch from a place where they can get on with their thing, somewhere where you are the observer, almost like in an experiment. You're sitting at the kitchen table and they are down on the floor doing whatever it is, but you are paying attention to what they're saying and what they're doing. Start noting down things that they're fascinated in. Start noting down the things that they say. They'll be parodying you in your family. They'll be acting out the stories they see. But you're starting to see from your perspective. Of course, you'll have judgment, but it's not something to be exercised at this stage. Everyone has judgment. We're taught from that. It's how we make our decisions. But just see if you can watch from a neutral stage. Now, when you come to talk with your child, you can reassure them, affirm things that they say and that they know to be true. You can ask them things, allow them to explain, and then agree. Now, you're not going to agree with everything. Of course you're not. But by gently encouraging and affirming and agreeing, you are building up something which is an internal certainty. Mostly at the age of 3, 4, 5, your child hopefully hasn't been too widely influenced by all of the media structures. Hopefully you haven't put your child in front of the TV for hours, and I'm sure you haven't, because you're that kind of active parent who instinctively understood that using a television set or a video as a babysitter is not a good idea. That hypnotic state where a child has been sitting in front of something doesn't sit well with you when you know their true, excited, natural energy that comes from them. That idea of sitting and holding and agreeing is something that a lot of parents don't give. And it's something that really well-meaning parents do give, but don't quite realize the value of it. It is extraordinarily valuable to see a child. In my work, I see children for 40 minutes a week. That's one little session of 40 minutes in a 7-day period of 24 hours. You can think, well, how could that have an impact? But the thing is, when the work that I do with children is mostly in performing arts, so they may be acting out a script. They may, of course, be improvising and devising a story, or learning a song and singing it, or indeed dancing. But when I'm working with a script, there I am sitting as an audience listening. It is my job to listen. And just this extraordinary act of listening to a child for 2 minutes, that means my focused energy is in absorbing and noticing everything they do. That's an incredible energy exchange. And those children really feel it. They will confide in me things that they would have kept secret from others, things that are troubling them, because they can see that if I'm prepared to shut my mouth and truly watch and listen and value and understand everything they're doing in just 2 minutes, the time it takes to perform a monologue, they realize that I'm then someone that they can trust. So imagine you as a parent, you see them for far more than 40 minutes a week. And imagine all those little 2-minute opportunities you have through the week where you can just sit and be with them and listen to them and observe them and watch them and affirm with them. What you're doing is building this muscle of internal trust. So when a doubt comes out, and a doubt will come up, we're always surrounded by doubts because it's the idea from outside coming to jostle with our own conclusion. And of course, we're wired to either accept that new idea, to bash it around with our own internal original idea and see if it fits. And we either reject it or we reject our previous idea, and that's the process of learning. It literally is like a bite of information coming to you from the outside world, from a new experience, from something somebody you feel is important has said to you. And it comes towards you as a package of energy. And then you have the choice in that moment of just rejecting it outright because it feels very strange, or you take it in and you peruse it and you cogitate on it and you feel it. And some of it you may accept, and some of it you may reject, and some of it you may feel so good with it that you push out the original thought on that subject, and that now goes into the waste paper bin, into the compost heap of previous ideas. And that's what a cell does when it brings in new information. And there were some wonderful cognitive scientists who, Rebecca and Mauricio Wild, my favorite educators of all time, they studied Maturana and Varela, who were cognitive scientists, and they used the model of a cell, how the cell brings in new substances to bring into the cell to feed it, to manufacture new things, or takes substances which are created in the cell and pushes them out through the membrane. This choice, this active decision, deliberate decision making. And they were combining this idea of how a cell produces everything, and of course we're made of trillions of cells, with how a child makes its impressions upon and interactions with the environment. Rebecca and Mauricio Wild loved this idea, which was beautifully put in there's a great book called The Tree of Knowledge, where it's detailed. And they put forth this idea in their school, and the children there were self-directed. That means they had got this sense of internal trust and internal security, that they knew that what they were interested in was valid, and they were allowed and encouraged to, within a very beautifully, carefully considered, prepared environment, to go forth towards that which interested them, to peruse it, to experiment with, to play with it. I use this term playful learning in my books. The 5D Handbook to Children's Learning, for example, there's a lot about the experimental play and all of the different levels of play that we use to learn with. Anyway, this is how they learned at this school, and the children grew up to be incredibly self-confident, self-reliant, responsible beings who were very, very inspirational in later life, mostly leaders in their university groups, and went on to have very happy lives because they had this internal trust firmly within them. And you can do this too. So it's by the holding and gentle encouraging, but it's also having an environment where the child feels safe to be themselves. If your sofas are white and your carpets are white, that's beautiful, but then you must have another space that you and your child interact with, because a child needs to explore. And imagine if they're coming in with something that's coloured or what you call dirty, and it's being placed on your beautiful white environment. The child's instantly going to feel wrong and guilty. And how can you do that with an environment? And I always place this emphasis on how do you have an appropriate environment for the child to learn in, and not just learning things to do, but learning how to be, how to question. Am I allowed to challenge the status quo here? Am I allowed to reach for a new idea? Am I allowed to try out this thing? And you know very well that in a school playground, in a school classroom, very often this is not encouraged. You have a whole group of people with questions or no questions, but apparently a syllabus has to be pushed into them. And so when someone is an active questioner, very often they are suffering they suffer rejection at the hand of a teacher who's trying to push the same kind of information at the same kind of time into 20 different sovereign beings' minds. It doesn't work. You may want to continue to send your child to that school because it has a wonderful reputation and there are many, many other good things about it, that your child gets to play with lots of others. But what you will want to do at home is to give them the space to question, the safety to be able to say, I want to do this, I want to try this out. and not even have to verbalize it, but safely know that there is a place. So when I work with you in these sessions of how to recreate your environment so that your child has this safety, that's what we look at. And it's not just about sharp edges. It's about how have you structured your environment to enable and to allow and to encourage this natural curiosity which is burgeoning and growing in every single child. So I hope you enjoy reading my books. You can read, of course, the Milo and Teal books, which are transmissions from the planet Zog, where Milo and Teal are two children who know all this. This is how they learn everything I'm talking about. And they're working with Earth children to encourage them to be able to reach this state of ecstatic being and searching for knowledge. So those are my children's books. But then, of course, my 2 books for parents. In fact, I've got 4 different books for parents. The handbook to children's 5D learning, which is all about how children learn and how we can facilitate that. And then the second book is all about activating your source energy creativity, how you get close to source, the source of you and the source of your creativity, and how you are able to actually live a life which is not conditioned by other people's ideas, but your own internal structures. That's the truth of being creative. And then, of course, I've got books on singing and acting, and both of these are an amazing aspects. Singing, when you're singing, you are your own generator of energy. Sound is a profound way to transform your environment. So it's not just physical things I'm talking about when I talk about environment. Sound is an extraordinary thing because you're putting frequency into your environment and can attune your environment through that frequency. And then the other book, which is how to feel good and act better, is all about acting, but it's really about emotional intelligence, so that you and your child can understand who and what you are, what you're feeling, and to honor and value those things, and how you can bring that out into the world. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and hopefully you will have a look at those books, and please do comment. I'd love to have discussion with you. You can go to my website at www.inspiration.biz. Inspiration, it's like inspiriting. That's a wonderful word. It means to enliven and to encourage. If you go to that website, you'll find lots of different areas of information, but there's one big page where you can get all the books and courses in one place, and you can order as many of those PDFs as you want on all of the different books and the different courses, including my homeschool courses and the Equip, which is really about how to hold your hand while you're setting up this new way of being with your children. Thank you. Bye-bye.